Hi there and welcome back to another Papetti Math YouTube video tutorial, where today I am going to be teaching you Algebra 1. And in this video, we're going to be taking a look at exercise number 4, which is a continuation of our simple trinomial factoring. And in exercise number 4, it says, before you factor each trinomial, first determine if you are able to factor out a greatest common factor. So this takes everything we learned from lesson 1, and now it's combining it with what we're learning now in lesson 2. So the first thing we want to do is take a look and see, do we see a greatest common factor in part A? And your answer should be yes, there is definitely a greatest common factor because all of those terms are divisible by 2. So I'm going to write a 2 on the outside of my set of parentheses. And to find out what remains inside, remember from lesson 1 that I want to divide each term by my greatest common factor. So 2x squared divided by 2 is just x squared. 26x divided by 2 gives me 13x. And negative 60 divided by 2 will give me negative 30. Now, this is where I ended in lesson 1, but I'm not done anymore because now I want to look inside of my parentheses and I want to ask myself again, did I actually find the GCF? Is there a GCF of these three terms inside here? And if I did it correctly, my answer should be no. So I do not have a GCF, which means I successfully factored out a GCF over here. Now, my next step is to see if I could factor what's inside the parentheses. I'm going to start off each with x because x times x will multiply to x squared. And I need to ask myself, are there two numbers that multiply to 30 and add or combine to 13? So I'm going to list out my factors of 30, 1 and 30, 2 and 15, 3 and 10, and 5 and 6. Now of these, can any of these combine to 13? And I see two pairs that could combine to 13. Either 2 and 15, because 15 minus 2 is 13, or 10 and 3, because 10 plus 3 is 13. But now we have to take a look that we want to multiply these to get a negative 30. So we need one of these to be negative. One of these numbers needs to be negative, one needs to be positive in order to multiply and get a negative answer. Otherwise, if we have the same sign, they're always going to add to multiply to a positive number. So now that we know that these need to be different signs, it might narrow it down as to which pair we're going to use. And it should clue you in that we're going to use 15 and 2. Because 15 times 2 will give you 30. 15 minus 2 will give you positive 13. So 15 minus 2, positive 13. And 15 times negative 2 is negative 30. So right here, part A is factored. But again, if you were to write out x and 10 and x and 3, there is no possible combination of signs that will give you a positive 13 and multiply to a negative 30. You might try positive 10 and positive 3. That adds to 13, yeah, but it doesn't multiply to 30. So then you might try negative 10 and negative 3. That combines to negative 13. Nope, no good. You might try negative 10 and positive 3, but that combines to a negative 7. No good. So the only way possible is using 15 and 2, not 10 and 3. Which brings us to part B, where we're looking for a greatest common factor again. And again, you might see that your greatest common factor is going to be 3. And when you factor out the 3, you're left with x squared minus x. And 3 times what is going to give you 126, or 126 divided by 3 is going to give you 42. So what remains inside the parentheses is x squared minus x minus 42. And once again, you look inside those parentheses and ask yourself, is there another GCF? And the answer is no, because we successfully factored out our GCF in the first place. Now we look for two numbers that multiply to 42 and combine to give you negative 1. Multiply to negative 42, combine to give you negative 1. So we have 1 and 42. We've got 2 and 21. We've got 3 And what 3 times what is 42? 3 times 14 is 42. We've got 6 and 7. Now, of these four combinations, which combination can combine to a -1? And you guessed it, it's 6 and 7. But first, let's start off by heading off each of these parentheses with an x, because x times x will give us that x squared right there. And then we're going to be using 6 and 7. And how can we combine these to get a -1? That's the coefficient of the x term. Is it going to be 6 minus 7 or 7 minus 6? And to get a -1, we want to do positive 6 minus 7. So our final factorization here is going to be 3 times x plus 6 times x minus 7. That is 3x squared minus 3x minus 126 factored completely. And finally, in part C right here, we're going to look again for a GCF. And now this time you might notice that we have x's involved as well in our GCF. So we're going to have a GCF of 5x, because 5 is our largest coefficient, and x is the most amount of x's they all have in common. So again, we're going to divide each of these terms by 5x to get what remains inside our parentheses. What's going to be left over is 5x to the third divided by 5x gives you just 1x squared. Negative 15x squared divided by 5x will give you negative 3x. And negative 140x divided by 5x, well, the x's cancel out, and you're left with negative 28. Now we look inside those parentheses. Again, no GCF inside those parentheses. That's good. That means we factored out the right GCF the first time. And now we want to bring down that 5x, and we're going to open up two sets of parentheses to see if this thing up here factors further. Start off each with an x, because x times x will give us x squared. And what two numbers multiply to 28 and combine to 3? Well, we have 1 and 28, 2 and 14. We've got 4 and 7, and that's about all. Of those, which one could you combine and get a 3? You should see it. 4 and 7 could combine to get a -3. Now, how could you combine them to get a -3? Well, you'd have positive 4 and -7. So 4 minus 7 will give you a -3, and 4 times -7 will give you a -28. So once again, here's our final factorization of this trinomial up here, and here's our final factored form that we used our factoring rules to arrive at. If this video was helpful in factoring trinomials that had a GCF also, give this video a thumbs up, and you're ready for our final exercise, exercise number 5. Thank you for watching.